Can't focus. All right, I'm gonna jump into the He-Man thing and Kevin Smith in 1 second, but this is actually all related. The Flash and the Batman being turned into idiots. It's kind of like a Doomcock style rumor. Hey, YouTube is infotainment. It's like wrestling, sort of. This is probably true because you look at the totality of the circumstances of these people involved in, I'll loosely call it Hollywood, just being such just colossal douchebags who are just high on their own supply. It's easier for them to replace characters if you destroy the old ones first. For example, look at the first 6 original Star Wars versus the Disney Star Wars. Everything Disney did was to destroy what Lucas did. It's like if you, the more you analyze it, the worse it gets. All the original story was for nothing, and it's developmentally disabled in terms of the story universe. But the people who run this billion-dollar company, they seem like they might actually be evil. And as crazy as it sounds, they might be incompetent. I know that's hard to believe because you're looking at billion-dollar companies and you're like, your rich people don't make a whole lot of mistakes. But Disney isn't Disney anymore. It's been taken over by just these insane people, the pod people from They Live. And the thing with big companies is that, hey, they go bankrupt too because of poor decision makings. It is what it is. I think there's a tendency to like not idolize people, but think like people can't ever make mistakes because they're like billion-dollar companies. It's like, well, they make mistakes too. There's plenty of examples in history. So these pod people infiltrated Disney and they slowly hired these weirdos, and then the stories got more and more just far out there, and just people were watching them and like, this something doesn't feel right with this. If you hire SJWs, if you allow them in, they're like vampires. You're gonna get propaganda. Disney hasn't been Disney for like 30 years. They're just starting to take the mask off now, and it's going to get absolutely worse until they go bankrupt, which is on the table. That's not inconceivable. If you told me that 30 years ago, it would be inconceivable. Even 10 years ago, you'd be like, yeah, it's not really probable. And now, even now, they could turn things around, but the further they go down this pathway, the harder it becomes to turn things around. Anyway, if you had like an analysis, someone analyzed the economics of their company, they would say, yeah, that's probably true. The probability of them having problems in the future are increased now because of the decisions they've made since 2015 with the Disney stuff. Anyway, and if they do go bankrupt, the parasites will just slither away to destroy something else. Oh, and George Lucas deserves. I was going to say deserves to get kicked in the nuts, but YouTube may take that the wrong way. So I'll say he deserves our nuts on his face for selling to Disney, just like a whole line of fans just teabag him repeatedly, like 100 people to teabag him. He's turned out to be a thin-skinned, sensitive little pussy. So what is going through the minds of these kitty-diddling coke sniffers is, I have a fabulous idea. Let's replace these male fair countenance characters with breastless POCs. That sounds like a great idea when you've been doing drugs like for years on end. What they do now when they introduce a female character is they tear down the male character because they don't know how to build good characters, so they only know how to tear people down, so in relative proportion or relation it's propping her up. Because this is more than about movies, it's about a narrative of corruption. Alright, comic book heroes are heroic, but they are unfortunately the wrong color for these globalists to allow them to be held in such high esteem by little kids. So as they continue to take their masks off, they have this thing called the humiliation ritual, which, like, keep those words in your mind as you look at what Hollywood does, and it's like all of a sudden you'll start to go, yeah, this kind of makes sense. They're not ordinary people. There's something weirder going on here where they can seemingly be willing to lose billions of dollars to push propaganda. You're like, it doesn't make sense unless you understand that there's something else going on. They will tear down anything. They will tear down anything of the past that is the wrong skin tone. They just can't allow it to continue, and it is killing them that they have to wait a little bit on the Riri, Ms. Marvel, and Shuri characters that they're going to bring in. And, you know, like, knock yourself out making those characters if there's a market for it. But those kind of shows are more like direct to streaming, and I almost said DVD, but I guess it's Blu-ray now, but I don't even know if like what the physical media is these days. These kids these days with their Pac-Man and their MTV. And if you like films in general, if you're a movie buff, get a couple of 5 terabyte drives and make just redundant copies of stuff. You can fill it with enough stuff to last you the rest of your life. Because the post-2020 riot film universe is looking pretty effing bleak. Probably the best stories are going to come out of very small filmmakers who don't have the social media pressure to be giant bleeding vaginas. Or if you're into comics, support the marginalized, disenfranchised, and oppressed indigenous peoplekin folks of Comicsgate. There's a ton of guys in Comicsgate who are coming up. I'm going to do a video either later tonight or tomorrow on the kind of the Cyber Frog revolution, because he's got a toy line coming out, which is like, when I first saw this years ago, I thought, yeah, this is why he's panicking over a lot of stuff, is because the toy line comes out, and then a cartoon comes out, and then a movie comes out. So you go from like the $1 million level of selling comic books to, $10 million level. And then from cartoons, and then tens of millions or more of making movies. It's like you're thinking of this big picture of starting this dynasty, and it's all coming down to Comicsgate. It's a trip to see what Comicsgate is capable of. So it's good to see people succeed beyond their wildest expectations, I'm sure. So check out Comicsgate. There's something for everyone in comics. Even if you're like the Christian side, there's like Soul Finder, and who's it got? Tim Lim has got, I think, stuff out there. There's a bunch of stuff. Anyway, and as for making Flash an idiot in real life, he is an insane actor. I'll say allegedly addicted to pharmaceutical enhancements. I don't know if that, defamatory statement's a fact, right? Well, go watch some of his interviews. Either he is a bipolar bear, or he believes in better living through chemistry. Who doesn't? Who wasn't young at one point? I'm sure he's young. I'm sure he was completely sober when he threw that girl around in Iceland? Greenland? I don't know where it was. He did an interview with Gal Gadot. He comes across as a crazy person. Even when he was in the movies, I kept hoping somebody would string piano wire around so we could just see pieces of him get sliced off. That came out a little bit more morbid. Anyway, he was as unlikable in the film as he is in real life. I hope he's on drugs, because you can stop drugs. That's what the 12 steps are for. But you can't stop being crazy. At least he won't have any... Ooh, skip that next part. So, Ezra, it was a reference to a South Park, how Bono from U2 was created. So Ezra is doing an interview next to Gal, who looks mostly human, but Ezra either looks alien or he looks like he's got genetic damage from years of inbreeding. Watch the video, then randomly freeze it. Gal still looks mostly human, but you can see the demon trying to get out of Ezra. I say this without fear of his fan base, because I can't imagine that he has any who are sober enough to leave angry comments. Brie Larson fans are insane, like to the point of, it could be dangerous. They copy and paste long, angry rants to defend Brie Larson's racism, sexism, and ageism. I would respect them more if they just said, yeah, Brie Larson is racist. Suck my balls. Anyway, look at what they're doing with Kevin Smith's He-Man. You have a large blonde man with an iron cross on his chest. He is everything the kitty diddlers in Hollywood are not. They hate that. Like, if you're a YouTube normie, you have no idea how much they hate you. Go on Twitter. The blue check marks will tell you. Like, 6 months on Twitter following like 500 blue check marked accounts, you'll know you'll be where we are. But those are the accounts that are like fans of Drag Queen, Story Hour, and trans kids. So wood chipper. So what they're doing overall is they want POC characters, but if they just create a new IP with those characters, nobody is going to watch it because the audience just doesn't want it. For many reasons. But Samba TV is an industry analysis site that studies how people respond to TV and video. Overwhelmingly, the audience prefers fair-skinned characters. Even POCs prefer them. Another issue is TV in general, or the video format, why am I talking with my hands, is a challenge going forward because there are too many platforms. Back in the day when He-Man, G.I. Joe, Thundercats, Transformers were on, all the kids in America were on board, and that's true with any TV show. And things were different in the 80s, even up until the 90s. Like, people were on board, on the same page, way more than they are now. And that started to fracture when cable came out. It's like if you didn't have HBO, you weren't watching whatever Sex and the Cities and Sopranos. And God, two of the most overrated. I'll say Sex and the City was overrated, but maybe I think that's a female show. Like the only people I knew who liked it were women and my token gay friends. So because in the 80s and 90s there weren't as many channels as you have now. Like, I don't know how many outlets there are now. 1,000 maybe. I mean, like mainstream stuff. Anyway, so I don't think you're ever going to see the creation of super IPs as easily as you saw in the 80s or 90s. Those Cyberfrogs toy line, it guy funded $200,000 in one day, and it's like that's probably going to get to, I don't know, $2 million. So there's definitely money out there, but it's like, well, what would that have been back in the day equivalent? Like $200 million. If you had fewer distractions for kids. That's the problem, is distractions. Kids have their attention and their pocketbook or their parents' pocketbook going in too many directions that a cartoon's got to compete for it. You've got a lot of competition, and the creators, they don't want to wait for an IP to catch fire. It could take 5 years. It could take longer. Those days are over. They're just gonna blackwash old characters. For some reason, SJWs only see African characters. They use them as generic POCs. Spanish or Asians are invisible. It's freaking weird. Anyway, so all these blackwashing, all that is nuts because the buyer is like 40 or 50. I mean, the buyer for collectibles who are going to buy this stuff and not open it, and just put it on their shelf and stare at it unopened. They'll buy that, and they'll buy collections for nostalgia, like video collections and stuff like that. Like, how much did Lord of the Rings make in DVDs? Kids today have video games, social media, free internet shows like YouTube, paid streaming stuff. You've got cable and TV and whatever. So, like, if you captured 30% market share in 1986, today it's probably 3. Actually, in 1986, like, how many kids knew about G.I. Joe? Of a certain age range, it was probably almost, like, of the English-speaking audience in 1986, kids in a certain age range who knew about it, I'm guessing it was over 90%. Where that saturation today for market share, at least awareness, would be like 3%. Because these little customers these little bastards, have so many choices, including watching old stuff. So you're race swapping characters to the 40-year-olds who are in market for, $80 collectibles, but they're not on board with race swapping. They remember the original show, but now everyone is black. They don't want that because that wasn't the magic of the 80s. That wasn't the magic of the original characters. Oh, there are no black characters. There weren't that many, admittedly. Lando Calrissian was a big seller. Obviously, the whole show wasn't full of Landos because that wasn't what the market demanded. It's just as easy as that, but you include a little here and there, it's like you're going to be able to sustain an industry. The only reason they're doing it is propaganda, to be as anti-European as possible. And we get it, and some of us get it more than others. Those people are all on Gab or canine whistling on Twitter, or they're in the Salty, I don't even know if I can say Salty's full name on YouTube, because it's kind of a racial slur. Salty has a private chat, and my Discord can take you there, perhaps, if you pass the Arcadian's nude picture requirement. People are catching on, is my point. So it comes down to this. They say, like, oh, it needs more diversity, and we just say, no, it's fine the way it is. Go suck my balls. Just make something new, and they don't want to do that because they have this humiliation ritual to take part in. I look at this now as an adult, and I'm like, why aren't they wearing pants? This is a little much. But when you're a kid, like, you just don't sexualize characters. And he skipped leg day. You just don't sexualize characters the way adults are seeing into things. Clamp Champ. That's like somebody who's not an English speaker came up with the idea, and they translated it into English, and then they translated back into another language, and they just kept going back and forth. Anyway, so they're talking about they have no walks, women of color in the show. It's like, yeah, well, what's the character based on? It's some guy in a Iron Cross, blonde, vaguely Prince Valiant haircut thing going on, vaguely European crusader, cruising around the Byzantine Empire, whatever the hell they were doing. Yeah, there weren't little black girls who were buying that, and guess what? Little black girls aren't going to buy this. Let's analyze the market of little black girls who are into this. Dude, it's less than 1%. You know what? I know. We know that's not the reason. You're lying to us, and we're all on board that you're lying. So why are you doing it? Because you can't idolize a European character. And I know a lot of people in like the YouTube crowd, nobody's going to touch that topic because they're making money on YouTube. I'm not monetized. It's not a big deal if I lose a channel, but that's what it is. You can't have, like, the Fourth Age will talk about it, but his videos are so long, it's like SJWs aren't sitting through a half-hour analysis of what's really going on. That's what it is. They don't want you to look at fair-skinned characters and idolize them, because you look back through European history and it's like, it's pretty awesome. And it's like, I never would have thought I would be talking like this a few years ago, because it's just, it still seems weird to me because I've been so brainwashed, but it's like the stuff they're doing now is so evil, like deeply, darkly, seriously. These are serious, important issues. And I don't know if, I think people on YouTube, I think they know what's going on, but it's, YouTube's a cash cow and they don't want to, and I'm not, this comes off a little backward, like passive aggressive. I don't mean it like that. Because everyone is red pilling people. Even Clownfish TV, which I always thought of as kind of a left wing show, it's like they're dropping red pills left and right if you're there to listen to it. So is Yellow Flash, so is Ethan, so is Diversity in Comics. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, guys. I'll see you on Odysee, BitChute, and Coffee if you want to leave links there. And I'll see you next episode.